Welcome, everybody. I am so delighted today that we have our first guest for Black Belts and Boardrooms. And today, with my co host, Renard Henry, um, I can't be more stoked, Renard. Tell us about our guest.
Man, we have none other than Bradley Friemel, the vertical CTO of Rentals at Fullsteam, also known as Tony Stark. Thank you for showing up today. We are happy to have you.
No problem, and that's a very nice introduction. But a little rundown about myself. I'm the vertical CTO of Rentals at Fullsteam. I've been in the role for quite some time now. Led an incredible turnaround of a couple of our businesses, and I guess on my free time, I'm an avid endurance athlete and have been around the world, ran races everywhere, and most recently, within the last couple of years, completed an Ironman down in Cozumel. So it's been a fun ride trying to balance everything.
Man, I think we are looking forward to talking about your story, especially on the Iron Man side. I've told
Hmm.
everybody you are, a real life Iron Man. I've been calling you Tony Stark everywhere, but want to get into starting of your backstory. Always, what I'm going to say since we got this Iron Man theme going on, your origin story. If you could just give us a rundown of how Bradley, where is he from? The
Hmm.
history of Brad.
Yeah, no, that's the origin story. it's it's pretty fascinating. So I actually come from a very small town in Texas called LaGrange, and got really lucky with a couple of my teachers throughout. It drove me into technology. So I was always the kind of kid that straddled the fence in between athletic endeavors, but I never really followed the mainstream. So it's like I wasn't a big football guy, but I loved cross country, and apparently I got very talented at that very fast. It ended up getting down to sub six, around 5 30-minute miles back then. So it became a passion of mine and just stuck. So I had a dual track of interest that just stuck with me since early teenage years. And now I'm, oh Lord, almost 40. So I've had a few years in the game on both of them. But the cool thing is, whenever I went to college at a coastal town, so I got to live that like carefree beach life. So if you take my personality traits of just that beachy surfer guy, and then you tie it with endurance, it yields some massive benefits in the boardroom around trying to lead a team to be cool headed and calm and kind of fun and keep pushing forward and driving.
Man, that's great. That's great. And I know that you started off a little bit differently. You were an engineer at first. And
Yes.
then engineer, then you moved, over time to CTO. We know you're a founder as well, entrepreneur. So you have both hats on. So if you could tell us the story from a professional side, how that you started from an engineer and then moved into being the CTO. How did you break out of that individual contributor to leading a team?
Yeah, definitely. That was a it's a very interesting way to look at this one. So I love being an IC. I love being an engineer for 15 years. But it finally made it to the point when I was a top level architect where I realized that the CTOs above me were just as experienced as I am. So I looked around and I was like, okay, well, I think I can lead better than this. So that's what spawned me into taking the chance and the leap and becoming a CTO, was just the leadership aspect, because I focused so heavily on how I would have ran a team. I was like, it only made sense for me to run a team at that point. So I made that transition, and I'm not gonna lie, it was rocky. ICs, it's fun. You get quick wins and everything like that. When you're not, it's a long road to the goal. like, like for instance, we didn't even my last big win didn't really even occur to me till after a year of being in the position. So yeah, it's a different. different track of achievement.
No.
So Bradley, I want to pick on that thread just a little bit. So you've touched on something that I resonate with a lot, which is you have to give the time for things to brew and for things to cook for the team to, get the outcome that you're expecting. So how do you frame it for the team? What are some tricks or shortcuts that you can share?
Yeah, that's always the interesting thing too, because it's that soft skill that a lot of technical people don't really have. And I think that's what benefits all of us from coming from such a big sports background is so I look at it not even as a mentor. It's like I'm a coach. It's like, okay, what are the best coaches you've ever had? It's like they try to relate to you, they try to push you, and they always root for you. So I went into running this department like that. And it's amazing how quickly people trust you. If you know, or if they know that you're going to go to bat with for them, it's instant trust. And I feel like as soon as you can build that trust, the whole culture changes then. And they're highly productive after that.
So no frameworks, no cheat sheets.
Not just good old fat. It's always the boring stuff that works. Let's be real.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's so true. I'm reminded, when we're learning the basics of any sport, what do? You stick to the fundamentals. And it sounds like that's what you're doing is sticking to the fundamentals.
Yeah, yeah. I used to do that in Muay Thai. It's like jab, jab, clinch, knee, done.
Yeah. Speaking of Muay Thai, how's your kicking?
Uh, it was a lot better, that's for sure. So I trained Muay Thai for probably the last like 5, 6 years. I forget what I started. 6 years now. Golly, time flies, right? Um, but it's it's not bad. It forces flexibility, which also benefits me in my endurance too. So, and especially, it's like a self-fulfilling flywheel. So it's like the better my cardio gets per round and the more limber my legs gets, yields better endurance like outside the gym.
Yeah. How do you make time for all of this, Bradley? I mean, I'm sitting here listening to your story and I'm thinking to myself, man, how do you make time? Can you share a little bit of insight on how you manage your week?
Yeah, definitely. And not to add fuel to the fire, but I also have a 2-year-old and a wife. So it's
Oh,
like, yeah.
Okay, so the Iron Man moniker is 100% true. I think
hmm,
Renard, you've definitely identified Mr. Iron Man right now.
yeah.
But so what really helped me in my time management was understanding my priorities. And I lined them up from top to bottom. So like the top five of my priorities are like faith, family, fitness, finances, and then finally my career. So at the end of the day, if it comes a choice in between making an hour here or an hour there, I run through my list and I just do what I think is right. And having that good boundaries and high level integrity keeps me to that schedule. And my family doesn't feel neglected, my work doesn't feel neglected, and vice versa. And frankly, it's even along with that, it's making fitness a priority for me because it's so beneficial on stress management, relief, it's fun. And it's something that even though you master it, like become a black belt, there's always levels. There's always somebody out there to keep you going and motivated and keep you learning.
I'm gonna agree with that. I love how you added about how working out, etc., helps mentally, physically. Just for me, I always say jujitsu keeps the Hulk in. That's why I'm so
Hmm.
calm at work all the time. So I love how you added that in there, and also love how the way you prioritize everything. Work is at the bottom of everything compared to everything that you have at top. Because I always say for even myself, I like if I don't have a great family life, then I can't do everything else.
Hmm.
So me having, great family, having great friends, have my son, etc., all makes me focus on being able to be better outside of the house. So I love how you put that on there. And just going back to your to being physical and working out, Why Ironman competitions? Why?
I I love running. Like, period. End of story. So I I don't know. I love the challenge. I love the community. I love the camaraderie of the runners and the participants and even the crowd. It's just something that is so unique. And I've done like mud runs and like all kinds of other stuff too. And these are by far the most fun. So, and it's not even just that it's a challenging endeavor, it's a rare endeavor. So it's like I think 1% of the US population tends to do a marathon. And it's like, okay, well, an Ironman is a couple mile swim, 120-mile bike, and a marathon. Yeah, yeah. So it's a serious endeavor, and I find that the benefit. So there's multiple benefits I get. Like the main one though that I find for me that's the most helpful and I love the most is it sharpens my fortitude and my focus. Because if I'm out there pounding the pavement for, 6 hours, it's like I have to be focused. Otherwise, you'll get fatigued and all that other stuff that's pretty terrible. But it's that focus and clarity and really drives me to be able to fix the hard problems here at work. So it's like, for instance, the endurance that I pick up outside of work, I take in. And whenever we were transferring servers from Rackspace to AWS, it's like we hit a downtime. And it's like I had the fortitude from all that hard training that I've done in the Texas heat to stay cool, under fire, and then lo and behold, we got it corrected. So that's that's what I really firmly believe is just the focus that it will give you.
I like that. I like that. And one more thing I want to go into this Iron Man thing. Like you say, you're doing three different events technically in one.
Yeah.
So how does that mental have it? You have to have strong mental fortitude, like you said, in order to be able to do that. I'm sure at some point you get to a point where I want to quit.
Oh,
I'm good. I've done this enough.
mhm,
I'm just done. I want to quit. How are you overcoming that every single time?
yeah. That's that's definitely a mental gymnastics that I have to do. But the cool thing is what I find that motivates me and keeps me going is I treat it like play. Like I get to go swim and this is going to be fun. I get to go bike forever and this is going to be fun. And then at the end, when you're pounding the pavement for a marathon, it's like, I'm here. I'm doing this. This is so cool. This is fun. And well, I could even drive it home too, because in the Cozumel one, I had a little GI distress. So I wasn't able to eat any carbohydrates or anything. So I just did it on pure water. So by the end, I was finishing my last like 5 miles and I started hallucinating. And I was like, well, this is going to be a wild story.
What did you hallucinate? Now I got to know. What
Yeah.
were you hallucinating?
Oh, man. So I was running down the main drag of Cozumel. And they have these pillars in front of some of the houses that go up to about mid waist, and they have a big ball on top. And I start glancing, and then they start dancing, and then one turns into a lion. I was like, I'm not doing so hot right now.
Oh, man, that is awesome. That is awesome. That's a great story. That's a great story. I think understanding the mental fortitude that it takes to even have that, and I'm sure that it easily transitions for you every time you go to work, you deal with your team, etc. So I know that that's something we'll get deeper into later into the conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Bradley, I want to really just understand when you're in these moments where you are just, I'm halfway in this marathon race, or I'm halfway in this swim, or I'm halfway in this bike race. What do you like tell yourself? How do you take those lessons afterwards? Because I'm big on reflecting on my day and my week and my month and so on. But what do you do? Like you're in this moment, 6 hours in. At the end of that day, do you spend time reflecting? Do you take those lessons? So walk us through how do you just accumulate all of those emotions, all of those thoughts, and package it in a way that you can reuse it again somewhere else.
Yeah, that's fair. So, yeah, when I hit the bottom, it's typically either I'm too fatigued or I'm cramping or something along those lines. And honestly, for me, I sit in the feeling. So I try to dig myself in further to dig out because eventually I hit almost like a quote unquote rock bottom where it's just hilarious that I'm thinking like that. And then it'll just totally revert me out. And then typically afterwards, it's like, okay, so I got down on myself. Why did I get down on myself? Well, I was cramping. It's like, okay, cool. So probably didn't have a lot of salt. So, and then it's like really trying to take a quantitative approach on how to fix, or not fix, really, just prevent that like negative, your inside head. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Quantifying everything that's going on within you while you're in the moment. I mean,
Yeah.
that's incredible fortitude, if you ask me.
Yeah. It keeps your mind busy.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have a nutritional playbook that goes along with your training?
It depends. It depends on the season. So typically in the fall, I like to go a little bit heavier on the protein intake. And then when I'm doing more mileage in the spring and summer, it's heavy on carbs. So that's what I'm not one of those like ketogenic or meat eater guys. It's like, no, 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 I eat what I like. It's just, I just mess with my macros.
Very cool. So how does that okay, so I'm going to be a little bit analytical here. So I'm going to say, okay, you're taking your macros, you've got your percentages figured out. How do you then take that type of I guess way of execution, and how does that look like when you're as a CTO versus, let's say, you're in the trenches talking to your team? How do you then transition using this type of a skill set? Because that's a skill ultimately that you've developed, just looking at your body, understanding.
Yeah, so it's actually it makes a very easy transition because if you think of yourself like a project, I mean, which we all are, we can easily translate that idea to Jira to where we can create a project. And we're like, okay, so if you relay, I want to lose 15 pounds in like a handful of months, then you can step it back out to create your stories and your tasks based on that. Flip side, if you want to create a feature, you got the end goal first, define it, and then work through there. So it's really the same idea on both sides of the house by practice.
I don't think I've ever met anybody who's called themselves a Jira project.
Oh God, yeah. It's like I am not a Jira expert by any stance of the imagination. So I'm a product manager for a reason.
That's amazing. So, speaking of projects, so had there ever been a time when you've looked at your project and you says, "What was I thinking when I organized it like this?"
Oh, I mean, it's software all the time. It's one prime example is I wrote a multi-international coupon portal, and I was looking at the way that I was displaying the coupons in like an infinite scroll. I was like, "Oh, this is not good," and had to rewrite it. And it's like 3 months before I thought it was awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But the question I have, I want to delve back into a little bit. Can you give us a day in the life? What is full steam? What is it, and what's a day in the life for you going into the office every day?
Yeah, for sure. So Fullsteam overall is a private equity firm that has a payments portal system. So they typically go and, or I guess we typically go and buy smaller businesses and then roll them into different verticals like field service or rentals or some other few, like I think bridal and health is one too. So that's what they do. So that allows people like me to come in and take control of a couple different businesses and then start modernizing and build them for scale. Because typically these smaller businesses aren't really necessarily built for scale. They're just thrown together and they're making a bunch of money. So that's kind of where Full Steam does, and kind of all of my focus has been on stuff like that. So it's like typically around 15 to 20 million in revenue is the companies that they purchase.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. And for you as the CTO, what is your strategy for that vertical?
Yeah, so it's actually a really fun vertical. So we have a couple different companies in the vertical, but we're primarily focused on one system. Well, two companies, one system. Think of it like a platform, um, where it stands for event rental systems and dumpster rental systems. So think backyard parties with like bounce houses and um, cotton candy machines and stuff like that. And then on the flip side, think those big residential dumpsters that are like on construction sites. So you would hear that and think that, well, those are two starkly different customers, and they more or less are. But both of them run their businesses, or both of the business owners run their businesses off of ours, and they have a lot of commonalities in between them. But the way that I've been taking this to the future is I have been to a couple conferences on both sides of the house, and my startup that I built was all in AI and analytics and stuff like that. So I'm taking a lot of those ideas along with some other really fun stuff and translating them to the different business sets. Like for instance, we're working on a shopper agent, a personal shopper agent, to basically plan your entire party for you. So you would be able to roll up to one of our sites and just type in some details, and then it comes back with all the available inventory that makes sense for your party and gives you a description for it. And then on the flip side, on the dumpster side, we're actually working on AI routing and being able to take into account tonnage, mapping, all of that kind of stuff. So that's really how we're focused on the new innovative future of two boring industries.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's something you wouldn't think about.
Yeah,
Everybody talks about AI. AI's the main topic for everybody, and you just start seeing how everyone's starting to use it. Just like your company and what you're doing is something that other people wouldn't think about for the most part. So I think that's great. And going into let's talk a little bit about your team a little bit. And far as your leadership style, you're doing Ironman races, etc. How are you taking all of that and being a leader for your team?
yeah, definitely. So I my team's kind of interesting because it goes across multiple companies and it's onshore and offshore employees to or near shore. So we have a bunch of engineers here in the States, and then we have a bunch scattered throughout Latin America. And you would think that you wouldn't be able to have the same approach to both, but their culture is so close to ours, it's almost interchangeable. But the way that I tend to do this is I look at how I am motivated myself because I'm just a smart engineer that made it to the top. That's all. But so I look at what would have worked on me and then I just try to replicate it with my team. So in sports and especially my team sports, I knew that I had to trust my teammate. So because if we didn't, we couldn't execute our plays or, we're just going to fall apart. So I thought back to myself and I played a ton of tennis and I was thinking about that back in the day and how my coach kind of helped spawn that trust. So I try to take some of those similar ideas to my team and force them to really work together and to collaborate and not depend on each other and be challenging. And the best way that I've seen it done too is by me as the leader leading the way on how we can interact together. And that's translated from our team being very siloed and shut off into this is one of the most collaborative teams that I've worked on and frankly the most productive. So it's amazing. And that also ties back to the trust comment earlier. If you force all that and then I trust them implicitly so they reciprocate in some sense.
Wow, love that.
Bradley, your team is so widespread. So I'm gonna ask you something that is such a hot topic, at least in the United States, which is working from home versus showing up in the office. It almost feels like it is more difficult to have that conversation than it is to talk about politics or religion or anything else. you know,
Yeah.
Anybody you ask is going to cite you some study that says working from the office is better and vice versa. So because your team is so distributed, and I think it's fair to say that we all work in that environment where we've got distributed teams. how do you as a leader make sure that you're building the right kind of culture in a remote, what sounds like a remote first
Mhm.
company?
Yeah, that's right. My team specifically is remote first, and I wanted it that way because I believe in myself as a leader to be able to bring people together across borders. So, but my strategies that I personally took was I told everybody, I drafted a document. I said, this is our charter. This is where we're going to act. We're going to live by this. And I'd set out everybody's job, promotions, like all of that. It's like, okay, guys, this is how we act. It's like determination, hard work, stuff like that. And to get to the next level, you need to be doing X amount, this and that. So it's all laid out. I had a department wide meeting, laid it all out, and I have to act the part after that. So I embody that culture so that they can feed off of that. And then along with that too, I have biweekly one-on-ones with every single one of my team members where I sit down for at least half an hour and I talk to them about everything or anything that they want to talk about with a little bit of my stuff. And I always try to reiterate our goals and our culture. So that's it seemed to work uh, pretty good.
So, I'm impressed that you schedule one-on-ones with every person in your team. Is it just your directs, or do you actually do this with every staff member?
Yeah, every staff member. Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Amazing.
a yeah. I mean, it's around uh, three business, 25 people. So
Okay.
That's still a
Still
lot
a
of
lot.
meetings.
Yeah, still a lot.
Yeah. So how do you, so you have probably people at every different, stratosphere when it comes to career journey and where they are. How do you, how do you protect the team from getting intimidated by role power? I mean, you're the leader of the organization. At some level, somebody's going to feel your role power.
yeah, yeah. I try to be as humble as possible, and frankly, I'm always the last one to speak. I let everybody else work through their ideas even before I say something because I know as soon as I open my mouth, it's immediately going to change. So that's kind of it's God man, what's that old saying? It's like Chiefs eat last. It's
Mm.
like that's what I do, and it seems to get the better options because frankly, the guys are in it daily. I'm not.
That's amazing. Living the message that you're communicating to your team. I love it. Yeah. So when you do run into a situation like you do have, that transference to AWS, like you said, we had many hours of downtime and so on. That must have been a pretty stressful situation. And in that moment, how did you still make sure that that pressure you were feeling wasn't going and spreading into the rest of your team? I mean, that must have been some kind of test of your patience, if you will.
Yeah, it's fortitude, really. Really, so after our sixth hour of downtime, it really came down to if we were going to have a rollback event, lose data, or keep plowing forward. And everybody was on high alert, high stress, all kinds of, I mean, as you would expect from that long of a downtime. But I took the entire wind out of the room because we were all on a group call, all cameras on. And it's like, I stood up and I was like, hey guys, we need to figure this out in the next hour or two. And if we don't, we're going to have to roll back. But I have faith that we'll figure this out and we'll get it done. And everybody, you could just see the stress go off. And sure enough, I think they fixed it 10 minutes afterwards. So I believe when you're deep into it and your metal's being tested to show up cool, calm, and collected, it will propagate to the people that are stressed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm picking some vibes here, Bradley. I'm picking the vibes of not only an Iron Man who is just all about self determination and fortitude, but you're also transmitting this through to your team as well. In your one-on-ones, how do you tend to follow? Is there a format that you follow that helps you build on this narrative, that helps you build on your style of leadership?
Yeah, definitely. So I always start with them first because they are the most important person in that meeting. So I start, shooting the breeze with them for 10, 15 minutes on what's going on in their life. How are they feeling? How are they doing? How's their projects? That kind of stuff. So I typically start with making a personal connection first. and then rolling into more of the technical stuff. And then after that, if I have something to say, that's when I'll circle it up. And then we'll talk a little bit about culture stuff. And usually I like to finish on career progression because I I don't, well, I always want to try to promote my guys as much as I possibly can. So it's always working with them, always asking, hey, what do you want to do? Hey, where's your interest? And trying to get them into it. And I believe that is one of my keys to success is that intense focus on their progression.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
that's great. That is great. I love to hear that your mindset is to, cultivate a group of people, your 25 that you have, and want to see them all grow. And segueing into something just made me think about something since you were talking about that. And it seems like you're very empathetic. You're focused on your team. Who were the mentors for you to change that mindset to get you that way? Who was the first person? We go back to that origin story again. Who
Yeah.
was your first great mentor for you?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this on one of my runs actually. Um, I have two. And the reason why I say two and not one is because they were both extremely impactful for me. So I had a high school teacher named Mr. Tenzing that literally changed my entire life. And that's the only reason why I'm doing computers and not back home on the farm. So I accredit him to where I'm at now, helping others. And he always took the time to help and explain things. And it was never like the technical jargon type stuff. We were learning it, don't get me wrong. But he would always try to break it down in like layman's terms and how other people would understand it. And I found that so powerful. That's how I like to conduct myself whenever I'm talking about technical stuff to people that are non-technical, which help put them at ease. And then the second one would have to be probably Gene Baxter. He was a CTO of a medical company when I was early in my career. And he had the most, God, what's it called? Executive presence I had ever seen in that point. He walked up and you could just feel the gravity that he had and just a wonderful personality. So he was actually one of my running buddies too. So we eventually, I eventually moved on, and then I combined both of those now into my leadership style of a really caring, empathetic, I'll take time for you, and trying to lead with that gravitas to really help show our team, hey, it's okay to be good.
That and we talk about work, we talk about you being an Iron Man, but who's Bradley at home? Who's
Oh,
that guy?
yeah. No, I'm a simple man. I don't have fancy watches, fancy cars, nothing like that. I love hanging out with my family and my kid and playing with him. It's, I watch the birds and the squirrels play in my backyard. Like it's pretty simple. I find it so cathartic too to step away from this high pressure, high technology to go, nope, not doing any of that, and it clears my mind. Like we don't really watch TV except for maybe 30 minutes a day. And as soon as I step in the door, well, I'll take that back. As soon as it's like 5:36, where I know nothing's going to explode at work, I ditch my phone and I don't see it till the next day.
Pretty good because most people can't do that. I will say I was one of those people who couldn't do that for a while. I was on any. I left work, I drove, I looked at the phone, got home, said hello, looked at the phone again, and was 100% in work mode the entire time.
Hmm.
So going into that, like you said, you're at 6:30, you're done and you focus on it the next day and that gives you a lot of mental clarity as well. So hopefully, and since we're talking about, hopefully you're not one of those guys, you're on vacation, you're still worried about work.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're trusting the team like it sounds like you are, so it's great. So the last part for me I want to step into, and we talked about mentors. We talked about you being an Iron Man. But what is it like as being that executive, which you are, you're a CTO? How is that? How is that every day talking to the other executives of the business? Can you give us a little bit into what the boardroom looks like for you?
Yeah, it's sharks being around sharks is the perfect way to explain it. So we're all cool, we all work well together, but there's still that air of I know exactly what I'm doing. You need to get out of my way. So it's how best to bridge those kind of egos and mentalities to actually come together collaboratively and work out a solution.
Wow. So sharks being what give me that again. Give me that motto again. Cause I had one, but I need to hear it again. Let me
Yeah,
hear it one
yeah.
more time.
Sharks with sharks.
Ooh, sharks with sharks. That's up with that. Being a lion in a room with other lions. That's in there. So I might have to steal that from you a little bit, Bradley.
Yeah,
I might
yeah,
have
yeah,
to steal that from you.
We have a sea reference, we have a land reference. I think we need an aerial reference now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Bradley, I, I know that there are probably people who aspire, listening to this podcast, aspire to be where you are, either as a technology leader or as an operations leader or any kind of leader within an organization. Given your journey and reflecting back, what would be some of the some of the advice you would share with people who are aspiring to be a chief anything in an organization?
Yeah, that's I'm a little different because I took a weird path. So all in all, at the end of the day, I believe it's taking risk will get you the furthest in life. So I've taken risks, jumped jobs that were easy and weren't challenging, kept moving, would always request to be on the high like visibility systems, which is always painful because you have all eyes on you. But all of that builds you. So I was typically every few years I've jumped ship just because I wasn't learning and then go into something else. And I would always try to attach myself to the high items. And sure enough, it just builds and builds and builds because if you're going for high item and high item and high item, and yet you're taking calculated risks, you're just going bigger and bigger and bigger because eventually you get used to where you're at. And then you're like, okay, cool. What's the next challenge? So that's my one piece of advice would be, especially people in the technology industry. It's like, it's cool to take risks. It's fine.
Yeah, I think culture and personality plays a big part for technologists. We get comfortable with the tech stack, for example, and then it's good for a few years, and then something else comes along, and then we're back to the certification, treadmill. And that's a hard cycle to break.
Yeah, it really is.
You know. So on the same point of mentorship, how do you advise your team how to identify and spot mentors in their own circles?
Mm, that's a great one. They typically, it's raw, just what word am I looking for? It's just raw talent is typically what I look for the most. So I like diamonds in the rough. Since I've been around the block or time or two, I can typically spot them. And it's a big mentality of you're technically skilled, so you're going to get respect by your teammates already. But it's if you just watch your team, they gravitate towards typically a certain person or a certain couple people, and it's not just because they're the most technically sounded. It's because they're the ones that is their confidant or they can help them or something along those lines. And typically when you can start seeing those patterns, that's your potential leader right there. You just have to coach him from being like, hey, no, I'll help you out, and be like, okay, no, no, no. This is actually how you talk. This is how you can assert yourself. Like that kind of path for them.
And then how do you deal with the team member who you see this huge potential in, but they just want to stay technical and they want to stay as an individual contributor?
I push people to that, actually. So you have to, as being a great leader, you have to recognize people's strengths. And some people are just algorithms and backend. that is perfectly fine. Everybody has a different gift. And some people, they want to go and talk and sing and dance in front of a whole crowd. Perfect leadership. Here you go.
That's such a good point. I was thinking to myself as you were speaking, there's a lot of those people out there who, look at management as a way to grow in their careers. Some organizations have a long career track for individual contributors. Like for example, I think of IBM and their fellowship program, for example. That's an executive track for an individual contributor, and it's a very highly respected position. How do you see yourself as a leader building that kind of a track in your organization? Is there any philosophies that you can share with us?
That's fascinating. Yeah. So I look at it like building up to like an architect level typically before, transitioning into something else. So it'll go junior, senior, staff, architect. So, but the different levels really depend on how much impact that they have on the business and then the overarching company. So you can tell a good senior when they know features, like in and out. It's like, I know how this is built. I know this, all that kind of stuff. But then if you want to go to staff, it's like, okay, no. I actually know what I'm doing for this particular project or this product. They know the ins and outs and stuff like that. And the architect for me typically is like more business oriented. It's like, how does all of this ecosystem connect and how can we go about improving it? So, and each one of those levels takes a sharp mental turn on how you're actually thinking about what you're working on. So it's not necessarily even a skill level thing. It's truly just a mentality way of looking at products. Well, at least for my organization.
Wow.
No, that's great. That's great. So, we've all met each other in vertical motion. So, I'm going to say that we've all been introduced in vertical motion. Vertical motion is a great community, career accelerator, especially for people who are trying to move up to be an executive, but you're already there. So, if you could tell us why vertical motion, what was the thing that made you say, "Hey, I need to have an executive coach"?
Yeah, definitely. So I believe in coaching, period. So between running coaching, lifting coaching, swim coaches, all of it. And it just makes sense to have an executive coach because it's just a different skill set that I'm a novice at, that I want to get better at. And the easiest way to fast track my progress is to get a wonderful coach.
Oh, I agree with that. I am a big fan of vertical motion. I will say that. I say it all the time when we're on calls. Tom and everyone on the team, the people who are part of the community, great people, like yourself, like Amir, etc. And I agree. Sometimes you need to realize that you need a coach, that you're not going to know everything, especially when you get to the executive level or almost about to get there. Either way, you might need a coach. You might need a coach. I needed a coach in football. I needed a coach
Mhm.
for jujitsu. Couldn't just be online and just figure it out for the most part. So I think it's the smartest thing to do. But going into one last segment for me is the soft skills of an executive. A lot of people, like we talked about earlier, are very technical, very high
Mhm.
level ICs, but what are those soft skills that you look for someone who at some point in time you might go to another company, etc. What do you look for soft skills for the next person up?
Hmm. That's a good question. So typically for me, it's a combination of emotional intelligence and empathy. So I like to build servant or transformational leaders in my organization. And between those two tied with charismatic personalities, it's a winning combination. So, but you can also foster those too. So, like for instance, empathy, you can have your engineers actually talk to your support people and go from there. That builds that empathy for your customers and what our support people go through. Um, Emotional intelligence, it's depending on the individual, is how you would tie your answer or how you're going to coach them into it. So it's real personalized at that point. And the charismatic personality types, it's that's actually not that hard to foster, shockingly enough, especially in technical people, because all you got to do is be like, hey, guy, just fake it till you make it, and you'll get used to it. Trust me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm going to ask you one last thing, because when we had our very first episode, I asked Amir what his theme music is. I gave my theme music. So Bradley, I have to know, what is your theme music when you go into the office? What are you listening to?
Man, I've had long philosophical discussions about this question. And I do firmly believe that your like walkout song or your hype song is a direct representation of your personality, like at its core. And for me, it's a lot of high energy tied with just powerful, honestly, guitar. So with a little bit of techno dashed in. So my hype song is actually Free Bird by Moon. Not Free Bird by Leonard Skinner, but it's
Okay.
like a remixed techno version. And it just takes the hook of like when it's has an eagle sound in it. Oh yeah.
Oh man, you can't go wrong with a good eagle sound.
No,
I
no.
can literally hear eagle sound right now. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. That's great.
Yeah. The only thing missed out is a cowbell.
Can't go wrong with good cow.
Right?
So Bradley, I am no audiophile, as Renard knows, so I'm going to have to look up this song, acquaint myself with both versions now.
Yeah. Oh, Spotify DJ X is the best thing for a run.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Bradley, I think I learned a lot from you. I learned that David Goggins is not the only human being who has grit.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to see somebody like you, also from Texas, like, Renard and I, and just having that emotional intelligence, empathy, and the intentionality behind grooming the team that you have. So I am grateful that you made time for us today, and I'm grateful that you shared some of your insights with us. I hope this is not the last time we speak. I'm really looking forward to maybe a future episode where we talk and maybe we kick it up a notch a little and see where things are going.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. And I do take a true craftsmanship approach to my lifestyle. Everything is intentional for a reason.
So I'm going to ask you, is your culture index a craftsman?
No, actually, it's an architect.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Okay. I like that. I like that. And I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we're going to close out. What is one thing you want to leave for the Black Belt and Boardroom audience to remember?
Mm. I would like to leave them with the idea of calm seas never made strong sailors. And this comes down to the fact that you never know how strong of a leader you are till your metal is being truly tested at its core. That's when you see what you will truly become. While I don't want everybody to go through that round, I believe firmly that everybody should, so they know how they would react at least. And I mean, everybody on this call has been there. It's like me on like deep, terrible runs where I'm cramping and all that stuff. Renard, you've been, I'm sure, choked out. So it's
Hmm.
like you
Yeah.
learn real quick.
Yeah.
And Amir, I'm sure you've caught some kicks.
Yeah, bruised ribs
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like those moments like humble you when you're struggling and you're like, oh, I'm getting beat. And that translates so deeply into the boardroom. So I really believe putting yourself through all those like hard fought battles really hardens your leadership into something where you can execute calm, cool, and collected and propagate that to your team when it matters.
Oh man, that's the way you end off the very first guest on Black Belts and Boardroom. So I want to say thank you, Bradley, for coming on, being our first guest. Like I said, it was what we expected. So that's why you had to be the first one. We want to thank you for joining us. Amir, I don't know what else to say, but I will say, to the next one. We will see y'all again for another episode, because we're going to keep bringing these out. And Bradley, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you on the next.
Sounds good. I appreciate the time, guys.